How is it going, party people? As you can hear, I have finished my exams, which means we are back to business. Since the last battle was narrated by my friend NinjaMuddkipz, it would be inappropriate to say the least to follow it up with a battle against anyone but this great man himself. Now I've gotta be honest with you, this wasn't the first battle I've had with Sam, but on the previous ones either we disconnected or I got my ass handed to me. So then I decided to abuse the beautiful weather in the Pewland and bring all the reliable Sun team, and we finally ended up with an interesting game, so let's get started. I lead off with Cherry Lady, because I realized that she's going to be MVP of this game before it even started. But in case his McBee turns out to be scarfed, I don't want to set up Sun too early to prevent my own weapon from backfiring, so I switched to Marshtomp to scout and pretty much dodged the bullet on the turn 1, because as we later find out, it is in fact Spec Stunfisk, so even with special defense boost from a flower gift, it will do a solid chunk to me and make a significant difference later on. Then I go for a Toxic to cripple whatever he decides to switch to, and he makes an obvious switch to Meganium. He decides to do the same on my switch to Volbeat, and then I T-Wave his Corsola on the switch, so we have a nice status fest on the field, but it turns out to be completely useless for me, because I U-turn out to Sandshrew as he sets up his rocks, set up rocks of my own as he goes back to Meganium, and then he reveals Aromatherapy as I go for a Rapid Spin, so it's like nothing happened on his side. Seeing that, I'm like, alright, it's time to start doing some real damage. So I go back to Rick Astley, and those of you familiar with this team already know what that means. Indeed, I set up a Sunny Day for free as he makes a smart play and goes for a counter predicting my U-turn predicting his switch. So knowing his entire moveset, I hard switch out to Cherry Lady as he goes back to Stunfisk, and again, I don't want to risk taking a Specs HPIs to the face, so I play it obvious and go for a Solar Beam, but he makes a very obvious switch and goes back to Meganium. Then I make another mistake and go for a Weather Ball rather than another Solar Beam, which does a ton of damage to incoming X-Cloud, but that additional 20 base power could be all that was needed to score a one-hit KO. Now I'm pretty sure that this thing is scarfed, because if he wanted to stall out my Sun turns, he will be much better off switching to Stunfisk and Meganium back and forth, and the amount I take from a double edge proves me right. But because of Stealth Rock, he decides just to stay in, finishes me off with another one and goes down as well to a recoil damage. Now I make yet another bad play and decide to go to Charmeleon rather than Cherry, predicting him to bring his McBee to counter it, but he goes back to Stunfisk instead, and that's definitely not a favorable matchup for me. So I go right back to Volbeat to take any hit from him, and it was only now in the middle of narrating this battle that I realized that he's running Specs, because Resisted Earth Power does a solid chunk to my specially defensive Volbeat, and he also gets a special defense drop, so even in the Sun, Moonlight barely recovers my health after another one and the toxic damage. Knowing that this isn't going to work out for me in the longer run, I switch to Sandshrew to take another one and threaten him with an Earthquake, which I don't actually carry, but that's irrelevant, because on the same turn he decides to switch as well for some reason and goes to his Machoke. This isn't just any Machoke however, ladies and gentlemen, and he quickly makes me aware of that by setting up a War Cap as I knock off his Eviolite, which scares the shit out of me, because this basically puts all of my predictions in a paper bag and sets it on fire. You see, War Cap is the only way of raising Machoke's special attack, but it also raises his physical attack, meaning that he could be a special attacker, but he could run a mixed set just as easily. On top of that, because Machoke has a Fire Blast on its move pool, yeah, I don't get that either, even switching to Volbeat isn't a safe option, so I just decide to stay in and go for a Super Fang. But since that reveals him my last move, I'm afraid that he might want to keep setting up, knowing that I'm in no way able to take him out. So I decide to risk it and switch to my Scarf's Luxray, but instead he nails me on the switch with a Focus Blast and it turns out to be a one-hit KO. Thankfully Charmeleon is still around at full HP, takes a +2 Vacuum Wave and finishes him off with a Fire Blast. Seeing all of my team, he probably figures that I'm scarfed, so he brings his Corsola again and goes for a Scald on my switch to Sandshrew, and since I don't want anything else to take it, and what's worse, getting burned, I decide to stay in, go for a Super Fang and let him take me out. That gives me a free switch to my Volbeat to set up a Sun as he sets up his Stealth Rocks again, and then I U-turn out to Cherry, knowing that with Flower Gifts his Scald won't do anything to me, so it all comes down really to whether he gets a burn right there or not. And what do you know? He does. That pretty much costs me this game. Let me explain why. Each Life Orb hit takes 28 of my HP, and burn damage takes additional 35, so without a burn I will take Mach Punch from his McBee with 87 rather than 17 HP, which will then give me 3 more Life Orb hits, more than enough to finish off his remaining 2 pokes, especially with Solar Power Charmeleon waiting to finish the job. But what actually happens is, my Cherim goes down to a burn damage, then I go to Charmeleon, and because I have hidden power ground, I decide just to lock myself on a Fire Blast instead, curious how much it will do to this Corsola. Meanwhile, he decides to switch to Meganium, afraid of a HP grass, so that's some nice Hawaiian barbecue. Yummy! Back comes Corsola, and I just want you to keep in mind that this is a quad resisted hit to a specially defensive Corsola. That is one powerful Fire Blast. Eventually, Charmeleon goes down to a Solar Power recoil, and now it's basically a matter of a few turns until he Toxic stalls my Volbeat, and that is the game. Good game, Sam. Came down to a single turn, but the one thing on your side that definitely deserves some credits is your Machoke. That thing is just unpredictable. Anyway, that concludes our PU journey. It isn't the last PU game that I have backed up, but the remaining ones you are going to see in Sweep and Get Swept. Next episode is coming soon, so stay tuned, like, comment, see you all next time.